Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to this week's Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week. General topic episode with Rodrigo Lopez. Hey, Rodrigo, what's going on with you?
General topic.
General
Matt is
topic.
not here, so.
Yep. We did have a Major Spoilers podcast pre-show this week. If you are one of our patrons, and Rodrigo and I talked about video games, specifically a little bit about Monster Hunter Wilds, my adventures with Steam Deck, and a new game that is coming out that has caught my eye. Ouch. But you can go check that out over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/majorspoilers. I think we kind of answered this last week, Rodrigo, but now that we're done with our 2-month adventure with G.I. Joe and the Energon Universe, did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share on that? I thought it was an interesting exercise to go through, but I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
So it's interesting because here we are, I don't know, is it 20 years after the Ultimate Universe?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right? Where somebody's like, okay, well, let's separate this and give this to like an architect to like come up with like all of these books that are going to be coming out, right? And this one is very tightly written, and as I said many times throughout my reviews, at worst, it's very readable, right? It's it's well paced, the characters are interesting, the characters have clear motivations. It doesn't beat the fact that I'm not that interested in G.I. Joe, and it's all in on G.I. Joe. There's one Void Rivals book and one Transformers book and like 5 G.I. Joe books, which I think were like limited series to get us to the G.I. Joe book, I think, right? Like Scarlet is not an ongoing.
No. All of those were miniseries. The only ones that are the ongoings are Void Rivals, Transformers, and G.I. Joe.
Right, but like I'm not crazy, right? Like,
no, it was very much heavy.
A like Cliff Jumper book and a Bumblebee book. Because Bumblebee died, but
nope, none of that stuff.
Yeah, so because it's so all in with G.I. Joe, and because I kind of fundamentally don't like G.I. Joe, like even this very well written version of it, I'm like, yeah, but it's like Soldier Guys. Like, I'm just not that interested in Soldier Guys. This is the part of the Transformers movies that I kind of blanked over. Because it's like as soon as a bunch of soldiers show up, I'm like, yeah, okay, well, tell me when it's like robot on robot action. And even then, the latter Transformers movies are basically unwatchable.
Yeah, I don't know if I've watched any. I think I just watched maybe the second Transformers movie.
Yeah, after the second, I checked out very hard.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've talked before that growing up, I had my toy of choice was Lego. If you ask me, hey Steven, you can have any toy, I would always say, can we get a Lego set? Because that has kind of infinite building possibilities. I had some base Star Wars. I had the main core Star Wars figures that were released from that initial 8-pack plus the mail-in Boba Fett figure. And those were the action figures that I had. I didn't have like race cars, like Hot Wheels stuff. Most of the stuff when I did get like Hot Wheels or He-Man, it was because a friend of mine in grade school was like, yeah, I don't want these anymore. He had everything. He had He-Man, he had G.I. Joe, he had Transformers, he had everything. And he was like, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll take them if if it's okay with your parents. And they were like, well, I don't care. And so that's kind of the extent of the kind of toys that I had. Now I had some electronic games, like if you go and when people think, ooh, you had cool electronic games like Coleco and Atari. No, I'm talking about like digital
like
football.
Simon.
Yeah, Simon and Coleco. Not Coleco. These old handheld football games, baseball games.
Oh, like Tiger games.
I believe so. Let me see if I can find it. A specific one. Oh, it is. Is it Coleco? No, Mattel had these.
Maybe.
Yeah, Mattel had these vintage um, electronic football. I'll paste it into our chat. This one, I ended up getting two of them because there were two competing companies that had it. And so you either had one or the other, and depending on which one you had more friends or less friends. I ended up getting both for some reason, but there was an electronic baseball version
Uh,
of this game. Let's see, there was a race car game where basically you had two different strips of race cars that would loop
right.
around, and then you had a little steering wheel and a speed shifter, and you were trying to see how many laps you could complete without hitting the other cars. That was kind of a wind up game. I had a really cool
Right.
Space
Right.
Invaders. I had a really cool Space Invaders game growing up that was basically Space Invaders handheld, and it was cool. And just like the original Space Invaders game, because it was too expensive to have color, try to get color programmed into the system.
Sure.
Um, in the original arcade version, they would just have this colored film that would go over the monitor so that the
Right.
aliens would change color. Same thing on this handheld Space Invaders game. Um,
That's smart.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like
So,
from the top, right? So like the top
uh-huh.
aliens look different and they change color as they go down. Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm trying to see. I don't see one on eBay of this, but this was probably my favorite one because it was the closest to a video game system.
Yeah.
The one that I had was white with a round top, and it was pretty cool. But I don't see any here on eBay that are being sold. I see like officially licensed Space Invaders. Oh, that was the other thing is I didn't have officially licensed anything, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for Space Invaders handheld, thinking, oh yeah, it'll just default to the one that I'm thinking of, and what I'm probably thinking is of Invaders from Space or something like that. Um, so that those are the kind of toys that I had. So, and then of course I would be busy after school, having to do chores or whatever, and so I was not somebody who would watch GI Joe enough to say, "Ooh, I have to go get these action figures," or I wasn't somebody that watched Transformers to be, "Oh, I need to get a
Hmm.
Transformer." Plus, Transformers were really, really expensive. Even my
Right.
friend Mike, who was able to buy eventually get several Transformers figures, he was more a GoBots fan because those were cheaper.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I never got into that Hasbro franchise of stuff simply because it was mostly inaccessible to me as a kid.
Yeah. I I mean I did. I used to watch the old G.I. Joe cartoon
Mhm.
and because I mentioned it during the last show. Because it was between other stuff that I wanted to watch. And if you turn off the TV at my mom's house,
Yeah.
she'd be like, "Okay, well, no more TV for the rest of the night. Go
Yep.
do something productive." So I had to watch the whole cartoon block if I wanted to watch the cartoons in between.
Oh, right.
So to me, it was like almost felt like a punishment to watch GI Joe. Like I
Uh-huh.
did not like GI Joe. It was like a weird exception because for me, I wouldn't care about a show unless it had animals or it was animated, right? So if it was
Yeah.
like a show where like there was like a talking horse or some kind of super smart monkey or something, I'm all in. If it's animated, almost anything's in. But like GI Joe, it to me was like, how can we make an animated show, as boring to Rodrigo as possible? I know we'll make it a bunch of like normal looking dudes driving around vehicles fighting a bunch of other normal looking dudes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Nobody has a bug head in this.
I did find it. It is actually, remember I said it's probably called Invaders from Space or something. It literally is
Yeah.
called Invader from Space, electronic held-hand video game from Epoch, Japan. I can get a
Wow.
used one for $25. I don't know if it works or not.
Yeah,
But yeah.
this is old school. When I was talking about Tiger games, they're definitely like the next generation after this.
Yes. Once LCD or not.
Mhm.
Yeah, LCD, yeah, or whatever
Liquid
the
crystal display. Yeah.
liquid
Yeah.
crystal display stuff became
Yeah.
popular. That's when all the kids in my school showed up with watches that either had calculators on them
Sure.
or
Yeah.
had, I
Mhm.
don't know if you had one of the watches that had a built-in game like
I didn't, but
basketball
some of my
shooting or
friends
something.
did. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I didn't have any of those kinds of things because it was like that's kind of extravagant. We've got a calculator at home that you can use if you need that. But yes,
Yeah.
that was that. Moving from these early '80s electronic games to the liquid crystals, and then whatever Nintendo started doing with the
Yeah. Eventually, the Game Boy comes out
yeah,
and
well,
destroys the universe.
and so that was so I never had ColecoVision, never had Atari, didn't have any of that stuff. So I'd have to go to my friend's house. They would have like Commodore computers and Atari and
Mhm.
whatever. I ended up, saving up my money to get a Timex Sinclair 1000, which was this you could program in BASIC, and it was basically a little tiny what today we would consider a Raspberry Pi kind of
Sure.
device.
Sure.
Um, and then we had an Apple IIc because my mom was a teacher, and so we got a discount on that. And for people that want to know what an early portable computer looked like, go look up the Apple IIc. If you think you've seen it before, you probably have. If you've seen 2010, the year we make contact, because Roy Scheider is on the beach using an Apple IIc to test out some programming stuff. So that was the computer that I had when everybody else had
Mhm.
PCs. So I couldn't even share um, discs on games with my friends, and they were all passing discs
Sure.
back and forth and all of that stuff. The first like real video game system that I got was the Game Boy, and that was when I was in. Was that had to have been like my junior year in college when
Mhm.
I got a Game Boy, and so Game Boy had been out for a while.
Yeah.
What year did Game Boy come out? And I'm talking about just the
1990?
not the one that had all the colored
Yeah.
displays, but like the OG Game Boy.
89. So,
Okay, so yeah, so I would have gotten this one probably around 92. No, it couldn't have
sure.
been. Yeah, it would have been like 92. So it had been out for a while. And I think I ended up paying like $70. This was like a Walmart thing.
Yeah.
And so I paid $70, and it came with I think it came with Tetris, because that's
Yeah.
what made the Game Boy. That was the killer app for the Game Boy, was Tetris.
Yeah.
So it
Mhm.
came with Tetris. I got Mario World. I got Castlevania.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I got that did end up occupying all my time, and it kind of goes back to the discussion that we had in the pre-show, was whatever the Final Fantasy game was on that. And I forget which one it was, but it was one that I ended up spending like, let's see, Final Fantasy Adventure. That's what it was. Final Fantasy Adventure was the game. And I spent, like probably 100 hours playing that game just because felt so open world.
Mhm.
And so that was cool. And so that's where I kind of fell into the Final Fantasy thing. But, that was my first handheld. That was my first video game. And that's when I, kind of got into this area of, I also had, what's Mega Man? There was a Mega Man game that was on Game Boy as well.
That would have come out for the Game Boy eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had that one as well. So yeah, that was, and then when I graduated from college as an undergraduate, the day that I graduated, I had all this graduation money, and Scroll Brian and I
Mhm.
went to Walmart again because the Sega Genesis went on sale, and I bought a
Nice.
Sega Genesis, and then for the entire summer between my undergraduate and my graduate year in college, uh, I would just play Sega Genesis all day, all night. I had to work
Yeah.
during the day, but all night. It was just like, hey, we're going to play Sonic. We would go and get when Mortal Kombat came out, we would go and get
Sure.
that. So yeah, those were my two main systems up until I had kids, and then we had to get Xboxes and PlayStations and
Sure.
Switches and
Sure.
3DSs and Steam Decks. So yeah, so that's kind of So going back to the whole GI Joe thing, that's kind of the reason why. I just don't have this nostalgia factor or affinity for that Hasbro stuff because I just didn't have it.
Yeah. I I I have that for Transformers. When I would like Transformers came out in like 85, and I think it made it to Mexico pretty quick. And I was born in 1983, so like
Mm.
Literally, some of my earliest memories are like watching the Flintstones and like watching Transformers.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, I believe
I
it.
loved Transformers,
Yeah.
and I got some Transformers when I was a kid, but like after the show was over and no longer airing, I kind of didn't realize that it was being like continued in comics and that there was like more of this mythology. So like, like it was years before I was like, oh, there was like a story to Transformers.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
was so little when I was watching that show that I didn't understand. It's like, oh, you had good guys and bad guys, but like the bad guys had like a little bad guy sticker. It's not even like you could tell them by like, the bad guys being like red or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. They were all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
different colors too. So it's like, okay, whatever, I don't know. And I've carried that with me for that kind of original version of Transformers where I'm like, I like Transformers, and then I'll watch like a new show that this is something that I talked about during the Transformers stuff, that I'm tired of the Transformers busting out of the arc, right?
Yeah.
Um, because anytime a new episode comes or a new series comes out, that's where they start, whether it's a comic book or a TV show or whatever, that's where they tend to start. And so I'm like, okay, well, yeah, Transformers are breaking out of the ark, and Uncle Ben is like, oh, with great power. And then they kill Martha Wayne.
Yeah. Yeah. Why did you say that? Yeah. So I get it. And I was just curious because we did spend maybe an inordinate amount of time on.
It was fun. Like, it was fine. It was a fine reading experience. Like, the Major Spoilers podcast pushes me to read stuff that I wouldn't normally read, right?
Good,
So
because
I
we have more of
definitely,
that coming up.
yeah, totally. I mean, I've been here for 10 years, right? So like,
Actually,
um,
actually, you've been here for more like 15 years,
okay,
16
all
years.
right. Well, oh, there you go. So I am glad to do it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then I can, because if it's something I don't like, then it's something that I can gripe about. Like,
Oh, yeah.
man,
Yeah.
this or that or whatever. That was a painful reading experience for me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I can chat about it or whatever. So it's like, yeah, like weirdly, I'm weirdly knowledgeable. Like, I know it seems weird for me to be on a comic book podcast and be like, I'm weirdly knowledgeable about comics, but that's because we read all kinds of different comics, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not just down the line Marvel and DC. We actually like spread it around as much as possible. So, people are like, what's this like saga thing? And I was like, oh, saga's good. Or, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what's this like We Three thing? And I was like, it's weird, but if you liked Plague Dogs, it has a slightly happier ending than Plague Dogs.
Yeah. Speaking of discussion, Rodrigo, dear listener, if you want to join in this conversation about the Energon Universe, jump into the Major Spoilers Discord server. You can join the Discord server absolutely free. There's a link in the show notes. We'd love to see you join our growing community. In fact, Rodrigo, Kyle Higgins, yes, the Kyle Higgins who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago, actually joined our Discord server, I think just yesterday or today. So you never know who's going to pop in and say
Welcome.
hello at the Major Spoilers Discord server. So there you go.
Yeah, it
Did
is
you
a
go ahead?
seriously a super chill place.
It is. It
Like,
really is. I mean,
it really is.
we got into some politics talk over the weekend, mainly
Sure.
because I started it. And we've actually I've set some rules up for politics talk. You have to be a
Mhm.
patron. More on that in just a moment. But even when we had a heated conversation, it was polite.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever have yelling matches on our
Yeah,
Discord server.
people are not there to fight. Like,
No.
some places you go and people go there to fight, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't come to our Discord to fight.
Yeah. Rodrigo, did you watch the Andor trailer?
I did.
What'd you think?
I'm excited about it, but I'm not necessarily excited because of anything I saw specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because when I saw the first trailer for the first season of Andor, I was like, yeah, 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 the guy from Rogue One. This is a Star Wars thing, and so anytime he was like flying a ship or shooting a gun or whatever, I'm like, yeah, that's Star Wars. Like, it's very hard to put on a trailer the thing that made the first season of Andor special,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which was writing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
very strong character based writing. And so because of that, I look at this trailer and I'm like, yeah, it's Star Wars.
Mhm.
I'm gonna watch it, but I'm gonna watch it because the writing was so good. So I'm excited that it's coming back. But again, there's kind of nothing you can show me now because like I fell off of Ahsoka. I haven't watched The Acolyte. Like, there's like nothing that Star Wars can show me that makes me think, oh, this is like a cool thing in the Star Wars universe for me to watch. Spaceships, laser battles, they don't mean anything anymore because I've watched stuff that I don't like in the Star Wars universe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, the important thing is the writing, and that rarely comes across in a trailer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even more so in this trailer because we know what happens to Cassian Andor. We know he dies in Rogue One.
Right,
Spoiler alert, right? So
right.
now we have to go from his indoctrination to Rogue One in one season.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they will be releasing these in 3-episode chunks. Every week will be 3 episodes will be released. I don't know if they're doing
Wow.
it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or all at once, but every 3 episodes take place over the course of 1 year in universe.
Oh,
And so
okay.
the end of season 2, which implies that there is no season 3, end
Hmm.
of season 2 leads us right into Rogue One.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Certainly, they kind of did the same thing with the first season of Andor, except this one is what's going on Cassian's planet, and then
Right.
it was now he is doing a heist, and now it's a prison breakout movie, and now it is a you know however you
Yeah.
ended up that kind of thing. It's full
Right.
conversion into the rebellion.
Yeah. The full radicalization of like a guy who was just like, I just want to do this,
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
and it's like,
exactly.
no, you're going to become a freedom fighter because you know
Because
you need to,
one of the
you have
Skarsgård
to.
told you to.
Yeah.
I think it's Skarsgård is one of the, was
It is. Yeah.
that
It's
guy.
it's
Okay.
the dad. It's the dad Skarsgård.
Okay. All right. So I'm really looking forward to that. I know there's a lot of haters out there. I wonder if, because I was looking at I don't know if it was IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. It was IMDb because I was looking at all the cast of characters. Uh,
Hmm.
Rogue One has a rating of 7.6.
Okay.
Andor season 1 has a rating of like 8.6, like a full
Hmm.
point higher. I wonder if after season 2 and we have a complete arc from beginning to end, and if season 2 is good as season 1, if there will be a bounce back for Rogue One where people are like, "Oh, now that I know what's going on, now I have a better appreciation for this movie and I'm going to rate it higher."
If season 2 is good, I think it is going to buoy like definitely viewership for Rogue One,
Mhm.
but it'll also show up in consumer reviews, like
Yeah.
not like, yeah, it's like critics aren't going to go back and like change their
No, no,
their
no, no.
review.
No, but
But yeah,
fans
when
will.
you look at the tomato meter for fans, it's probably gonna go up unless season 2 is so good that Rogue One
Yes.
now looks dorky by
Yeah.
comparison. But I like Rogue One.
I do
Like,
too. It is.
Rogue One has a lot of problems,
Yes.
but it is a solid little movie. Like, I am completely down with it. I think Rogue One, out of like everything that we've gotten in the Lucas era and in the post Lucas era, like Rogue One
Mhm.
is definitely one of the standouts for me.
I would agree with you. I would say I would probably rank them in this order right now. I would probably say I s- I would probably say Andor season 1, Rogue One.
Hmm.
I actually like Skeleton Crew a lot more than anything else that I've
I
seen. And
I
then,
like Skeleton Crew too. I thought that was good.
uh-oh, I think I lose you. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we had a little bit of a reset there. Rodrigo was talking about how much he enjoyed at the beginning of the show. You may have heard us talk about, or maybe it was on the pre-show, talking about this storm that's blowing through this winter storm. So we got bumped off just very quickly. But Rodrigo, you were saying how much you liked Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, Skeleton Crew was real solid. Again, if you're looking at like the Star Wars series, I think Skeleton Crew's up pretty high for me too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I liked, and so the next one on my list would probably be the first season of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And then after that, I know people are gonna hate me for saying this, but I actually think the Solo movie is actually not bad.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
Like I don't know. I never get it. Like I'm always kind of out of sync with the rest of the like the more vocal Star Wars fans, I guess.
yeah.
Like I thought Solo was okay. I thought Rogue One was okay. Um, I thought it's like I didn't like The Last Jedi, and a lot of people didn't like The Last Jedi, but also
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people really, really like The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is like this huge like inflection point where it's like there's like a huge split, right? Generally, the loud Star Wars fans tend to all go one way or the other. I think The Last Jedi kind of split them.
Yeah. I have that theory.
So
I mean, there's an ongoing theory that Gen X, we loved the original 4, 5, and 6 episodes, right?
yeah,
Phantom Menace came out, and we were all like, this ain't so
yeah,
good. But millennials were
sure.
like, oh no, this is awesome. Phantom Menace is
Yeah.
awesome. And then they get to
Yeah.
they get to the Last Jedi, and they're like, meh. But then again, you get to my kids, and they're like, oh yeah, this new trilogy of films is, god dang it. No idea. Something keeps flickering and bumping me off. So
You check in all your connections, maybe
no,
your
it's
animals
literally
chewed on them.
we're literally having a brownout. It's just
Yeah,
enough
that sucks.
for it's just enough for things to lose connectivity in certain places. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Clearly, Lucasfilm is
yeah, we
like
should stop talking about Star
having
Wars.
a denial of service attack or whatever.
Yeah, but I really think that that's a generational thing with all of the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so
I was
it's
talking to someone and it's like everybody has um their Doctor and their Green Lantern and something
mhm,
else that I
mhm.
was talking about, and like it oh their first magic set, and it like really colors the way that you look at the rest of the franchise, both as you start to discover the past stuff and see the stuff that comes down the pipe.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of Magic the Gathering, why is there
Yeah.
a Spider-Man in my Magic the Gathering?
Okay. Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Well, considering that the electricity just bopped off again, let's go with the shortish answer.
Okay. The short answer is that Wizards of the Coast has this initiative called Universes Beyond that has been monetarily successful as they have sort of implemented it in small degrees. There have been trials like the Walking Dead standalone cards, and then they did a D&D full D&D set, and then they did a full Lord of the Rings set. And now the dam has broken, and there's going to be a full-on Final Fantasy set, Spider-Man set, and Avatar: The Last Airbender set. And those are all coming out this year.
So I can play all of this stuff in Commander, or do I only get to play Spider-Man in the Spider-Man set?
No, you
And
can play it all. You can definitely play it all in Commander. Uh, the reason why this is a big deal is because the Lord of the Rings full set
mhm,
was only for modern, which is an older format, so it
mhm.
was geared towards that. But the Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, and Avatar um, sets are going to be standard legal, so they will be
Oh, so you
in
can play these in
standard.
competition?
You can play these in competition, and you will see them if you tune into a Magic competition. By the end of the year, you will see like Spider-Man equipping like Cloud's sword, and being boosted by like Toph's earthbending into
Yeah.
somebody's face. Like,
I wonder now again, this stuff was probably planned out a long time ago because like you said, there was already a Final Fantasy set and a Lord of the Rings set. But this
well,
also
there's
kind
a
of
Dungeons and Dragons set.
oh,
The Final
Dungeons and
Fantasy set
Dragons.
hasn't come down yet.
Okay, so Dungeons and Dragons set, which makes sense. That's their own IP.
Yep. Yep.
But I kind of get a Lorcana vibe out of this
Hmm.
because in Lorcana, and I've only bought like one of the base sets to kind of play around with. But it's like, hey, Ariel can equip, Stitch to go in
Yeah.
for an attack, and it's like
Right.
that weird cross combo of properties that you don't think should work together, but somehow do.
Yeah.
Is this something you're looking forward to, or is this going to be, in your opinion, a disaster?
Absolutely not. I'm not looking forward to it, but there's a long and proud history of me being like, I'm not interested in that, and it selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
So, which doesn't bother me, right? I'm like, oh, I'm not interested in that. It sells like hotcakes, and I'm like, well, I guess I was dumb for not getting in on it. I'm not. Nope, I'm still not interested in it, right? So I'm not interested in this. I like a certain amount of Magic the Gathering players, entrenched Magic the Gathering players, like people who have played for a while and are currently playing, um, are a lot of us are not happy about this. And the main reason why we're not happy about this is because we, like idiots, believe Hasbro when it tells us anything. So when the Universes Beyond stuff started poking through, it was something like in Ikoria, there were cards from Ikoria that were also like characters from Godzilla. And what they did was there was a Godzilla version of the thing. It was like Godzilla King of Monsters, but underneath it, it had the name of the magic card, right?
Mhm.
And it had the same mechanics as the magic card. So this was like a paint job on top of the magic card,
Oh,
right?
right, yeah.
Um, but then they started, so they're like, yeah, you don't, this is like just a thing. And then we're like, okay. And then they're like, okay, we've come out with some brand new stuff that is like brand new cards that are not universes, whatever. What we call universes within, if it's like the Magic uh, IP universes beyond, if it's other properties, right?
Okay.
So universes beyond stuff like Warhammer and Doctor Who and Fallout and um they're like, but you don't have to play with these if you don't want to. They're available for Commander and for Eternal formats, but you don't have to play with them if you don't want to. And it's like, okay. um but now that they've cracked into Standard, now they're in like the largest card pool, right?
Yeah.
And they're new sets, so there's been some power creep, which means they're going to be stronger than a lot of other cards. And they're going to be pushing them pretty hard, right? This is the thing that Hasbro really wants to succeed. So now it's like, well, you said that we didn't have to engage with this if we didn't want to, but I'm going to log on to Arena or go to play at a tournament or whatever, and I'm going to have, Spider-Man using Cloud's sword coming at me all the time. I don't get to opt out of that, right? But
Mhm.
originally, they've basically been, we're a toad in the water, and they've been turning up the heat, right? And now it's boiling, and we're like, well, it's like you lied to us. And the thing is like Magic the Gathering always like constantly lies to us because they're like, no, don't worry, we'll never do that. And then they do it, and there's no consequence to it. If
Right.
anything, they just make more money.
Right.
So, like I hate to be like very negative about Magic, but Magic is constantly doing this. Like Magic, like there are so many things, like so many little things. Like they used to be like people were like, why don't you do human tribal? And they're like, we're not gonna do human tribal. And then they did. And like uh I don't know, there's like a lot of individual things where they're like, don't worry, we won't do that, and then they do.
Yeah.
And again, some small things that only like very entrenched players care about, and also some larger things that affect kind of the hobby as a whole. So that's why it's like I'm negative on it for two reasons. One, they lied to me. And two, I'm somebody that kind of cares about the like story and stuff of Magic, and I
Mhm.
don't want to play with Spider-Man
Yeah, that's what I was
cards.
saying.
Like
So are you in the
I
class
just
of purist then? Is that what you would consider yourself?
I guess I've been forced to become a purist. Um because I don't want Spider-Man in my peanut butter.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Um And it's funny because when they started coming out with this stuff, again, testing it out, there's a comic called Cardboard Crack that is basically a Magic the Gathering comic. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
affiliated with Magic, but it makes jokes about Magic the Gathering. And it's like the characters are like, I tap SpongeBob to attack you for this, and Spider-Man does this. And they're like, somebody comes in and is like, what game are you playing? And they're like, Magic the Gathering. And it's like, what? Right? And
Yeah.
that was a joke, but now there is a small SpongeBob set of cards that are coming out. Like
Ugh.
there are going to be SpongeBob Magic cards. And uh, Magic's story is great. It's like such a powerful intellectual property. It's
Mm-hmm.
been grown since the 90s. There's so much to it. It's a property sort of like Doctor Who where there's like lots of places and like
Yeah.
if they don't want to write the like horrible Cybermen type monsters that are off over there, they don't have to. They can go over there and mess with that like super old eldritch dragon that keeps trying to take over the multiverse, right? It's like there are so many places that they can go. They've created so much, and there's room to create so much more.
Yeah.
And this is going to encroach on that, right? We're going to get less Magic and
Well,
more Marvel.
yeah. So see, this is the reason why I was at first, because you and Rob were talking about it, and I think Brian
Mhm.
too, a couple of weeks ago, before we started recording Critical Hit. And I was like, okay, I was kind of only half listening because I was trying to get the game going and everything. And part of me is like, okay, I understand it because each of these planeswalkers can go and visit different universes, et cetera, planes/universes. But part of me is like, this is a real opportunity, or it was a real opportunity for Magic to say, okay, listen, there's a bunch of people, this week's top 10 rivalries. There's a bunch of people that are just like high fantasy Magic the Gathering nerds. But there's a whole bunch of Marvel fans that we would love to get into Magic the Gathering. I don't know why they didn't just make Spider-Man and all these other properties. Why not just spin them off into their own stuff
Well,
and
because
just
that
keep
usually
them?
doesn't work
Yeah, I
because
get it. I mean, I
that
get it,
makes it
but
a competitor to Magic.
I don't know if the purists would. I mean, the purists may not even buy the Spider-Man stuff, but it may bring in new people who have never played Magic because they're
That's
like, oh, here's this Spider-Man set. Okay, cool. What else is there? There's a SpongeBob set. Cool. There's a Final Fantasy set, and I can play in that world if I want
that's
to.
that's the idea, right? The
Yeah.
idea is that these sets have been met with huge results. Like lots
Yeah.
of people
Yeah.
who are currently playing Magic bought the Lord of the Rings set. Lots of new people bought the Lord of the Rings set and got into Magic that way.
Yeah.
It works. It absolutely works, which is why um, guys like me don't have a leg to stand on. When what mattered, for a long time, like Magic has been a multiverse since the beginning, and people used like I swear, most of us that are pissed about this stuff are people that used to read the old Daily MTG website,
Oh,
which was like
yeah.
Magic's official website.
Yeah.
And I would read articles, and people would write in and be like, "Hey, since Magic is a multiverse, why don't you guys do something with Warhammer 40K or
Mm-hmm.
even, Marvel or DC?" And they were like, "No, we're not going to do that because it's going to like contaminate Magic, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Magic can be whatever we want it to be. We can take it in it, but the moment that you introduce all these other franchises, Magic just becomes one of these franchises in this new sort of multiverse idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, yeah,
I mean,
like
I get it.
the guy, like Magic happens to be a great game that is extremely artistic, both in the way that it's designed and in the like just incredibly fantastic art and design that goes into these cards, like both the like art that you see on the cards, the way that the cards frames and text and everything is designed is really fantastic, and that's why they're the number one trading card game and have been since they came out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um but that's not what matters. What matters is making money.
Sure.
So whereas if I was creating something, I might be like, well, Marvel keeps knocking down my door, but we're not gonna run. Like, I'm not gonna run a Marvel RPG on Critical Hit. It's, not that I
Or
would have a
will
say.
you?
Not that I would have a say in that, because
Right.
it's a major spoiler show.
Right.
But you right. So like, presumably, I could say something like that, but Magic is not going to, because Magic belongs to Hasbro. And if there was a guy in Magic that was like, I don't think we should do that, that guy would get fired.
Probably.
So
yeah, I guess I get it. I mean,
like conserving I hate to say purity, but conserving the internal cohesion of Magic
yes.
is less important than making money.
Yes.
And so they're going to pursue the path that makes them the most money.
And that's why, like, again, I know it's not the same thing. So everybody who's going to write in and complain, just shut up now. In CMON's Marvel United game, you've got all these characters. You play the game, and it's every whether it's X-Men or whether it's the standard or whether it's all these other expansions, they're all compatible with one another. Then they announced, hey, we've got DC United, and it's like, okay, if you're a Marvel fan, you're probably only going to stay in the Marvel universe, and you're going to be happy there. If you're a DC fan like me, you bought into that entire system as well, and you've got the DC version to play with. But best of all, it's the same rule set. So if you want Superman and Wolverine to team up to take on Galactus, guess what? You can. And the mechanics are all the same. Or the IDW series of games, it is the system that they use for Batman the Animated Series and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's the same game system. If you only want to do Turtles, you can do Turtles. If you want to do Batman, you can do Batman. But because it's the exact same system, if you want Batman and Michelangelo to take on Two-Face, you can do it.
Yeah, but that's to a certain degree because those characters come from comics, and comics has always been this big like cameo kind of situation. It doesn't feel as weird, right? Like I'm not sitting here like hitting myself on the head because there are Final Fantasy characters in Smash Brothers, right? Smash Brothers has always been a big hodgepodge crossover game. Like so many of the characters in Smash Brothers don't make sense in universe being in the same place. Like Mario's proportions are literally horrifying. Right? If you're like a normal shaped person like Cloud or whatever, right? I wouldn't complain about that. That's fun because that's the vibe of the game. Magic has always been a game with its own lore and its own history. And so having these like weird non-canonical outside things feels weird. And part of the reason why Magic is so successful is that story. There's a big chunk of people that don't play very much Magic, but they love the story. And Magic and Hasbro have been big about letting those people in, right? Like there are a lot of Magic cosplayers that may or may not play a lot of Magic, but they see the characters, they read the story or whatever, and they're like, I want to play Teysa, or I want to play Chandra, or I want to be Jace, or I want to be Garrick, or whatever, right? They want to cosplay those characters, and they absolutely can, and they're within the sphere of Magic the Gathering fans.
Right.
But specifically, those are Magic the Gathering fans that are still for the story. Like, are you going to show up? I guess now it's like a lot easier. You can show up to a Magic the Gathering thing dressed up like Spider-Man. You just go and buy a Spider-Man costume and is like, hey, I fit in here because Spider-Man's in Magic. So, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it makes me sound like a big curmudgeon.
No, I was going to say, I didn't know we would set Rodrigo off this much by just talking about Spider-Man in the Magic the Gathering, but there you are.
Oh, well, this is me. Like, from the beginning, I've always been the guy who doesn't like crossovers, right?
Yeah.
It's like now that I'm old and that I've been doing the Major Spoilers podcast for so long, again, talking about how, this being a part of my life is like a big thing. I now approach crossovers where they want to be, right? And judge them based on that, right? As opposed to me being like, Green Lantern and Star Trek crossover is stupid. Like, in my brain, think this is very stupid. I don't like this, but I'm going to meet it where it is and judge it based on that, right?
Okay. So we'll find out more once the
will
Spider-Man set comes out.
honestly, I'm sure it's going to be fantastic because Magic has been doing a great job. Aside from some like a few big misses, but it's like a few big misses and mostly like really good mechanics. So I'm sure it's going to be good. We'll just see where the thing is. One last thing. Hasbro really wants all of these Universes Beyond sets to hit.
Oh yeah.
If there's ever a Universes Beyond set that doesn't hit, I don't know what's going to happen, right?
Or they might just say, "Oh,
like,
this whole thing doesn't work," and so we're going to shut down the whole.
I don't. Well, the thing is that now when they do the Spider-Man one, Marvel is going to be looking at them, right? Some money was exchanged.
Yes,
or some
Hasbro
money
has. Yeah,
is
Hasbro
going
has already
to
committed
be
to Marvel to license that. So yes,
right. So Marvel is going to look at that, and if that fails, if let's say the Spider-Man fails, which is not going to, people are very excited about it. But if it failed, Marvel would look at that and be like, "This is bad," and then other companies that wanted to license or be licensed by Magic will look at that and say, "This is bad." So one of the problems that people are prognosticating is that these cards are going to continue to power creep, like push the power level of Magic cards, because they want them to be commercial successes, and that's a cheap and easy way to do that. If you want something in a card game to succeed, you just make it more powerful, and people have to be like, well, I have to throw out all my old cards and put in these new, more powerful versions. So we'll see.
Yeah. Listeners, if you want to hear us talk more stuff, I mentioned video game talk at the earlier in the show, then you want to go check out the Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show. You can go find it at patreon.com/major spoilers. Just sign up at the silver level membership. It's $5 a month. You get access to hundreds of pre-shows. You get access to silver level. You get access to Critical Hit a week early. You get access to a whole lot of stuff when you sign up to become a patron at patreon.com/major spoilers. At the $10 level, you get access to the VIP chat this weekend. I went into a long rant about taxes and how I hate taxes, and taxes are the bane of major spoilers. But I also talked a little bit about where do we stand in things and what's going on with Critical Hit and how it ranks with everything else that's out there as far as a TTRPG podcast. See, even the cats are upset about taxes. You can get that stuff right now over at patreon.com/major spoilers. Cats and dogs living together. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was never meant to be. All right. So listen, you can't afford $5 a month, but you want a free taste of what's going on over at the Patreon page. We have been doing for almost a year now, the Major Spoilers Book Club. And this month, the last month's book in February was One Hit Wonder by Christy Rose. It's a kind of a Veronica Mars type detective romance book, and it was a lot of fun. And I even had the chance to talk with Christy Rose, and you can only hear that interview over there at patreon.com/major spoilers. Now, you can go right now and listen to that discussion. You can go and listen to every book club episode that we've released, because I release those absolutely for free. You don't even have to sign up. You can just go to our Patreon page, download and listen to that episode. The book for March is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Dr. Brad Will and I will be sitting down and talking about that at the end of the month. Join in to our Discord server. Share your thoughts, because we have a Reading Corner Discord chat that you can go in and share your thoughts about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then come over and listen to our thoughts at the end of the month over at patreon.com/major spoilers. Rodrigo, we kind of talked about this before, but there's this game Lancer. It's like big mech fighting robot stuff. If you're into the mechs, there's an RPG for that, and it's called Lancer. And you wrote an expansion for Lancer, right? Or you wrote a module for Lancer?
No.
What? I've been lied to this entire time.
So this is phrased in a really interesting way, and it's true and false. Uh, the false of it is that I have a published expansion for a game called Beacon, Beacon.
Okay.
And that game is based on Lancer's mechanics.
Okay. So it's
So
like Monster
it's
of the Week.
not.
It's like a Monster of the Week thing, right? Where everybody has uses the Monster of the Week mechanics for their own games.
No.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Lancer. Like
Okay.
it's so like characters like have like builds, and it's like a tactical game.
Yeah.
It uses Lancer's mechanics as the core, but
Okay.
it's different. So yeah, I wrote a thing that was officially published by the publisher of Beacon. It's called Prismaxia. You can find it on itch.io, which is where a lot of these games hang out. This is where people put up Lancer stuff. However, I am writing a Lancer setting, which hopefully will be close to complete by the time we play Lancer on Critical Hit. And you can read that now. You can read as far as I've gotten, if you join my Patreon, which is Patreon/Rodrigo D. Lopez.
All right. Cool.
So I'm posting stuff as I write it, so you can see my setting take shape like a time lapse video of coral or a plant growing or whatever, as I like slowly add things to it, and a lot of time change things. There might be a couple drafts that are free, so you might be able to like check it out and see if you think it's interesting. But yeah, if you're like, oh man, I got $5 burning a hole in my pocket,
After they become, of course,
I'm already a patron of Major Spoilers.
Yeah.
Then come on over and see if you're interested in what's happening there. But yeah, if you're looking for Beacon, or if you're looking for Prismaxia, which is what I wrote for Beacon, go to itch.io and just search Prismaxia, Prismaxia, or Pirate Gonzalez, which is the publisher, and you should be able to find it there.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I've already been paid for it, but the more successful it is, the higher the profile it is, and the more I am able to, for future projects, be like, I wrote this, and for
definitely.
people to like pay attention, or contract me to do it or whatever.
Very cool. Also, CompCom still sucks. I'm sorry. I went into it the other day, and even though I logged in, none of my stuff is there anymore, and I don't have my old character build and all of that stuff, and the interface is a pain in the butt, and maybe it's because I'm on a Mac, but yeah, I hate that. I hate that interface with a passion.
Okay.
Like every time I sit down, I'm going to have to rebuild my character.
You shouldn't have to. CompCon does store your character locally. So if you
I've downloaded it in the past. I've downloaded it in the past.
Yeah. So I mean, that's happened to me. I lost all of the Lancer Academy characters because I had to clear my cache for some reason. And then when I went back, I was like, oh yeah, everything's gone. So you have to do a manual download at some point.
Like at the end of every session.
I don't think so. If CompCon is deleting everything every session, then you might have a setting that is tickling it in a weird way, because that doesn't happen to me now. So make sure there's like a check for updates thing at the top right. Make sure that's
I've got that
clicked on that.
Yeah,
sure. And
it was just frustrating because I was like, oh, let me go see what my character build was, and then it was like, nope, sorry, no characters exist for this account. I'm like, the heck there are. There should be at least 3 characters that I created for this account.
Yeah.
And they weren't there.
Well, I have your character, so
Good.
at least one of them.
Good.
So yeah, like it's totally fair if you don't like the interface.
I think it's kind of cool. I kind of like it. I kind of like it is a very different way to, I have an interactive character sheet. I dig that a lot.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that every time I go in and I'm like, I want to add this, and then it adds it, and then I go back a screen and then come back in and it's gone. I'm like, ugh, that's the kind of thing that irritates me. So
Yeah, I wonder if it is like what are you using? Safari?
Chrome.
Okay. It shouldn't be a problem, honestly. Assuming that Chrome on a Mac creates a Chrome bubble inside the Mac, presumably.
I don't know.
It's not necessarily interacting with like the Mac systems directly.
I don't think it is.
Anyway, if it's for anything that I'm running, I'll keep a version of it and I can send it to you.
All right.
But for me, I like CompCon because I've played lots of games and I've seen lots of interactive character sheets and character builders, and pretty much nothing is as good as CompCon.
Oh,
so
no,
if you hate CompCon,
no, I agree with you there because I've used not White Wolf, but I've used a lot of different character builders, even going, what we used to use for D&D before they went to D&D Beyond with their character sheet with Silverlight and all that stuff. I by far think graphically, CompCon is great. I think from a standpoint of logic, as you go down the character sheet, it's great. I just don't like how the user experience is for me. Now, for you, it may be great, but for me, it still is problematic. So there you go on that. We'll have to figure that out soon.
Yeah, and CompCon is constantly being worked on. I'm a $1 a month patron for CompCon, so I get updates, and they're always working on it. That's another one, is that this is something that kicks them some amount of money because the Lancer community is like, the Lancer community loves Lancer, right? They're like, oh, Lancer, freaking Lancer, man. Like, that's what we're all like. So yeah, people are supporting them. It has official support. So when the people at Massive Press write up a new mech, they send it to CompCon before they publish it.
Oh, that's nice. So it's already in the system.
So the moment it comes out, it's ready to go.
Nice.
Yeah. So again, that's the thing, is like, compared to most other things, like the D&D character builder for 4th edition was very good for like the first time around, but the second version of it was built on Silverlight, which was a problem to begin with and then became a huge problem when that was discontinued.
Yep.
So we went back to like a cobbled together version of the old character builder, and eventually only I was able to get it to run on my computer. So I had to like make all changes for everybody's characters and send them their character sheets. And that was still preferable to like doing it by paper or pencil.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So yeah, I don't know that I would be as into Lancer or play Lancer as much or run Lancer.
If it wasn't for this, I would agree with you.
If it wasn't for this, Lancer is very crunchy.
Yeah.
And
very crunchy, yes.
Not only is it very crunchy, but it's very modular. Like, your character eventually has tons of options and are only allowed to take like half of those options at most into a battle. So it's like, yeah, I swap this and swap this, and it's like, well, do you have the system points for all that? It's like, well, CompCon just tells you.
Yep.
Right. So it's a lot easier.
The easier for that, the better. And if people are wondering what the heck is a Lancer, it's an RPG game, as I said, with giant mechs. You can go to Drive-Thru RPG or other places to buy the electronic version, although Dark Horse Comics and Massive Publishing just released, like, I want to say in December of 2024, a hardbound volume, updated version of Lancer, and it's a beautiful edition. So if you're looking for physical manuals, that's from Dark Horse Publishing. You can go check that out and get that probably from any fine bookstore, but also from Dark Horse Books. So go look for that. Rodrigo, have you watched Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man on the Disney Plus?
I have, yeah. I've seen
all the way through?
Not all the way through.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. So I watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes.
Okay.
and I was like, I'll catch up with this later. And yeah, then all of a sudden in my, the social media periphery, suddenly people are going, oh my God, the Spider-Man is so good. And I'm like, God
Yeah.
dang it.
So
I'm still trying to finish Sakamoto Days.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I watched the first episode of that. Like,
It's cute. It's
I
cute.
don't think it's for me. But
Yeah.
both of the boys have already blown through. Anytime there's a new anime, by the time I
Yeah.
sit down to watch the first episode, I'm like, hey, have you guys watched this? Oh yeah, we watched that already.
Yeah, we watched it. We read all the manga. We already know
we
what
already read
happened.
the mangas, all that stuff. There could be a longer discussion next week about are you really an anime fan if you haven't watched certain animes? Because
Sure.
I'm trying to
You're trying to
coerce.
gatekeep your kid.
I'm trying to gatekeep no, I'm actually trying to coerce them or convince them that they need to
watching the
watch
old school.
Cowboy Bebop, Akira, Nausicaa Valley of the Winds, Princess Mononoke,
Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell, and they haven't watched any of that, yet they've watched everything else but that stuff. And I'm like, seriously, guys, can you say you watch anime if you haven't watched those 4 or 5? So yeah, that's a conversation for another time. But I finished the last episode, I think Saturday evening, which, is only a couple of days after. I think the last episode dropped on February 19th. So it was only about a week later that I made it through.
Mm-hmm.
I am still not a fan of, let's put in the way that they do it in this show, the cell shaded treatment on top of the 3D model. I'm not a fan of that. I like it into the Spider-Verse, but I hate it. I don't really care for it here. That being said, if the characters, that only bothers me if the characters are at a certain angle for whatever reason. Like there's movement and things that are going on, and it looks natural. It looks like it's some cool 2D stuff. But there's only certain angles where you're like, oh yeah, this is like mostly in close-ups. This is not good.
Yeah, supposedly they're like specifically going for is it Ditko? Like Ditko-esque
Yeah.
style.
I mean,
so that's why the characters are kind of like rectangular in a way.
I dig it. I like the character design.
I like the character design.
The colors are wonderful.
Yeah, they're bright, which is nice. I feel like we don't get a lot of stuff in superheroes with bright color anymore, so that's nice.
This is definitely, oh man, I don't know what to say without spoiling it for you, man. So let's just say that Doctor Strange shows up in the very first episode.
Yeah.
That is not the only Marvel character that shows up in this show.
Okay.
I mean, beyond the Spider-Man characters.
Because Nico is there.
Yeah, Nico is there from Runaways, yes. But I'll just say Iron Man shows up in this at one point.
Okay. Becoming less interested. Go on.
Okay. I'll also say he's there for less than maybe 30 seconds of screen time.
Okay. All right.
Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross is in here. Not as Red Hulk, but as Thunderbolt Ross. Daredevil is in this.
Oh, nice.
Which is really surprising and done super, super well. And Charlie Cox does his voice.
Oh, nice.
And that's cool. I'm trying to think who else shows up. Captain America gets a lot of references.
Right.
But he doesn't show up.
Right.
There's like one more big Marvel. Oh, the Watcher shows up.
Oh, wow.
And it's like you have to pay attention to see the Watcher show up.
Oh, he's like up in the clouds.
Yeah, he's up in the clouds.
Being a head.
Being a big giant head in the sky. Show me what you got. Trying to think if there's anybody else that's a big Marvel character that shows up. It's just so. But so the reason why I asked if you had seen the whole thing is because there's something that happens in episode 10 that I was like, oh, is this what they're doing? And then I was like, holy crap! And then I was like, nice.
Yeah, so, I'm interested in it because like very clearly they're like, what if the origin of Spider-Man's powers were magic?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it feels like.
Yeah, you really need to. So, I can't say anything, but you need to watch the rest of the
I'll
show.
catch up. I think I'm caught up with Sakamoto Days, so I'll start on that. I was gonna start Farian. I don't know. Tumblr's going crazy about it.
Right. I know what you're talking about.
But I'll switch over to Spider-Man just so everybody can talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good, and then it's going to make you scratch your head, and then it's going to make you do some other things. And yes, there are some very cool moments with all of these characters. Anybody who's complaining about Norman Osborn
Norman
and
Osborn.
Harry being black, just ignore those people. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. This is obviously a different universe under different rules. Hence, I said the Watcher shows up
You
in an episode.
you wanna hear my theory about this?
Okay.
So I don't know if you've noticed because they don't make a big deal out of it, but like apart from like Aunt May and Peter, most of the characters that
Yes.
appear regularly
Yes.
are people of
non-white.
color.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have this theory that somebody that they went to Disney and they're like, okay, we want to make, or Marvel, and they're like, we want to make a new Spider-Man cartoon, and it's going to be Miles Morales.
And then they said
Like just starting
down.
up, just starting up on his own without Peter Parker or whatever. He's just gonna be Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like they shut that down, and they were like, okay, well then everybody else is black.
Yeah.
Except for the people that are Asian.
Yeah.
Right.
So Nico, what is Nico? Nico is Vietnamese. I think
she's Japanese.
Oh, Japanese, and then Pearl is, I think, Filipino. I want to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then of course you've got
Lonnie's black and Harry is black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then
I was like, I'm cool with that. I'm like, okay. It's like, it's like also like Spider-Man's from Queens, right? Like Queens, that area of New York is pretty diverse. Yeah. So it makes sense.
So you've got to the part where he's actually joined Oscorp, or not Oscorp.
Yeah. So I'm at the point, he got his internship, almost screwed it up, and then
so you've seen Amadeus Cho.
I've seen Amadeus Cho is there.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the other character that I couldn't think of.
Okay. I almost brought him up, but I'm like, well, that's he's not a quote unquote big Marvel character.
No, but I mean, people would know. People would know.
Yeah, people know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. No, it's good. And the other thing that I would say is there is for me, if I've seen the intro a couple of times, I'll go ahead and just hit skip intro to get to the story, especially if I'm doing a binge on stuff.
Sure.
I realized after I had skipped intro twice and I had let the intro play, because the music is great. The math club that does the theme song, it's a fantastic theme song.
Yeah, and the intro animation is fun too.
Yeah, the intro animation is fun because, and here's the thing, at the end of every intro, there's a comic book page that is telling you what the episode is. So it's like, remember in Batman, they would have these title cards that would tell you everything that's going on. Well, same thing happens in this, where you get to the end while the music is still playing, and it is, they don't tell you the title.
Like cover type
thing, it's
right?
like a comic cover thing. Like there's a point where Spider-Man, there's the walking down the alley with the suit and the trash can thing. And there's a thing where, you see Doctor Strange and it's like, oh, Doctor Strange is in this episode? That's weird. And, they do that really, really well. So and you can go online, somebody's collected all the end intro title cards, and I would pay attention to those because they're really good as well. I'd heard a lot of negative comments initially about this when it first launched, and I was like, well, I'll get around to it when I get around to it. And it was right after Valentine's Day, I think. Well, no, it was just a week or two ago, where I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and see what all the brouhaha is about. And I got to tell you, all those people are just haters for no reason other than they've switched everyone around, and there's people of color, and that's it. There's really no other reason. The voice acting is really top notch. The animation.
I mean, I think
animation
you're
itself is
allowed
really good.
You're allowed to not like it too.
Well, if there were problems with stories, like there's this one guy who did an hour and a half breakdown of why this show is terrible, and it's literally just
influencers.
Nitpicks.
Yeah, if they're influencers, then you have to take that with a grain of salt. But they have to write the scandal.
They have to do that.
Like I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, this is interesting, and it's like in it, like Uncle Ben has already died, and there's no direct tie to Spider-Man in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's something. Like, that's actually a huge choice. And again, I'm the guy who's here complaining that we've seen Uncle Ben die so many times. But it's an interesting choice to decouple those two things. And I'm watching it to see if that comes up in any way.
Okay, so you haven't seen the episode where
Uncle Ben comes back?
No. Uncle Ben doesn't come back, but there is a with great power speech that is made to Peter
Okay.
and
No, I haven't
for
seen
at
that.
least an episode, it changes the trajectory of the character.
Okay.
Where, yeah. And again, I
Okay,
don't want to
good.
spoil
Good,
it.
good,
I don't
good.
want to
Like,
spoil it
yeah,
for you. But
that's
then by the end of that episode, well, actually, it's the next episode, probably episode 7 or 8,
yeah.
when Peter is like, "Oh, wait a minute, no, that's not quite right," and then that's when you
Yeah.
start to see this bigger shift come. And I just love that we're seeing
I'm
these villains start to get introduced, and they're not fully formed, and
right.
it's cool. It's
Yeah. I
cool.
just don't want it to be like a thoughtless change, right? Like that the only reason was like, oh, we've seen Uncle Ben die too many times. Whatever, he's not that important to it. But like if they're doing it thoughtfully, then that's a lot better for me.
Yes, and by the time you get to the end of the series, it will make a lot more sense of just how thoughtful this first
Oh,
season
good.
was.
Good, good.
So much so that they're like, "Oh, they had this planned out."
Nice.
And then even better than that, they have announced that they plan on releasing one new season each year. So the next time we're going to see season 2 of Your Friendly
Wow.
Neighborhood Spider-Man will be in 2026, 2027, and I think it's been renewed for 3 seasons already.
Okay.
But if it continues to be good, then I would imagine that they're going to try to do it as long as they possibly can. The other thing,
And they're always looking for the new Justice League cartoon, right? They're
Yep.
always looking
Mhm.
for that spin-off wheel. So yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I would also go and try and find Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man original soundtrack, because the music in this show is great. It is
Sure.
really, really good. And then if
Yeah.
you've never heard the Math Club before, go and listen to just ask your S device or your A device to play the Math Club, and you're going to have a lot of good music to roll into the schoolyard with, blasting at loud speed and embarrass your children. So
Yeah.
I was like, playing the Spider-Man theme song, and I was like, "Oh, youngest son, listen to this." And he's like, "Yeah, this is pretty good." And I've got it cranked up, and because it's got bass and beat and rap and all that stuff. And then we get into
Mhm.
getting close to school, and he turns it down. And he's like, "I'm like, isn't that what every kid wants? Is their dad to be playing like modern music while you roll into the schoolyard, so people know that your dad's cool like you?" And he's like, "Yeah, but this is also Spider-Man."
Yeah.
So
Like, yeah.
he's like, "No, I agree that rolling in with some AC/DC is probably okay, Dad, but you may be pushing your luck a little bit too much here." So
Yeah. It's a different place. It's like they're gonna stuff your car in a locker.
yeah, that's what's going to happen. All right, everybody. That wraps it up for this issue. Thank you so much for downloading and listening. If you found value, we would love for you to join us over on our Patreon page. That Patreon page, again, is patreon.com/major spoilers. Again, if you want some hot video game action talk, then you're going to want to go over and listen to the pre-show this week. Next week on the show, it's Lucky Luke, because Lagnus demanded it, and we need to read some international comics, and because we know that you love comics, and we do too, and we will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, they kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler! What a major spoiler! Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm Stark Raven rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast. Being shot up in a fun, be in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler! What a major spoiler! Yeah, yeah, yeah! What a major spoiler! Whoa, 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 whoa! What a major spoiler!
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.